1 Samuel chapter 3, the Bible reads, And the child Samuel ministered unto the Lord before Eli, and the word of the Lord was precious in those days. There was no open vision. And it came to pass at that time, when Eli was laid down in his place, and his eyes began to wax dim, that he could not see, and ere the lamp of God went out in the temple of the Lord, where the ark of God was, and Samuel was laid down to sleep, that the Lord called Samuel, and he answered, Here am I. And he ran unto Eli and said, Here am I. And thou callest me. And he said, I called not. Lie down again. And he went and lay down. And the Lord called yet again, Samuel. And Samuel arose and went to Eli and said, Here am I. For thou didst call me. And he answered, I called not, my son. Lie down again. Now Samuel did not yet know the Lord, neither was the word of the Lord yet revealed unto him. And the Lord called Samuel again the third time. And he arose and went to Eli and said, Here am I. For thou didst call me. And Eli perceived that the Lord had called the child. Therefore Eli said unto Samuel, Go, lie down, and it shall be, if he call thee, that thou shalt say, Speak, Lord, for thy servant heareth. So Samuel went and lay down in his place, and the Lord came and stood and called as at other times, Samuel, Samuel. Then Samuel answered, Speak, for thy servant heareth. And the Lord said to Samuel, Behold, I will do a thing in Israel, at which both the ears of every one that heareth it shall tingle. In that day I will perform against Eli all things which I have spoken concerning his house. When I begin, I will also make an end. And I have told him that I will judge his house forever for the iniquity which he knoweth, because his sons made themselves vile, and he restrained them not. And therefore I have sworn unto the house of Eli that the iniquity of Eli's house shall not be purged with sacrifice nor offering forever. Samuel lay until the morning, and opened the doors of the house of the Lord. And Samuel feared to shew Eli the vision. Then Eli called Samuel and said, Samuel, my son. And he answered, Here am I. And he said, What is the thing that the Lord hath said unto thee? I pray thee, hide it not from me. God do so to thee, and more also, if thou hide anything from me of all the things that he said unto thee. And Samuel told him every whit, and hid nothing from him. And he said, It is the Lord. Let him do what seemeth him good. And Samuel grew, and the Lord was with him, and did let none of his words fall to the ground. And all Israel from Dan even to Beersheba knew that Samuel was established to be a prophet of the Lord. And the Lord appeared again in Shiloh, for the Lord revealed himself to Samuel in Shiloh by the word of the Lord. Brother Eck, would you pray for us?
All right, 1 Samuel chapter 3. Regardless of the situation, regardless of the person, regardless of the nation, regardless of the church, regardless of the movement, regardless of any type of leadership, we have to know there's going to come a time for the mantle to be passed. When you look at the Bible, you see Moses led the children of Israel, led them out of Egypt, and there came a time where Abraham, did I say Abraham? I meant Moses. Where Moses led him out of Egypt, led him out of bondage, led him to the brink of the promised land. And yet we find the very sad verse in chapter 1 of Joshua, Moses, my servant, is dead. Regardless of the time, regardless of the situation, whether it's good or bad, this or that, we understand God sets up kings, he takes down kings. God sets up an order, God takes down an order. Regardless of the situation, the person, the platform, anything, the mantle is going to be passed. Now, obviously, the mantle is not that we put on top of the fireplace. The mantle obviously is the cloak, it's a reference back to Elijah, the mantle, the raiment, what he was known for, his clothing, what was known for, the power, the prestige, the notoriety, the fame, the reputation, the power, the influence was being passed on to another. We saw in 1999, for some of us who are old enough to remember this, that's sad when I gotta say that. Some people weren't born in 1999. If you are not born in if you have been born after 1999, can you just do me a favor and just stand up? If you were born after 1999, this sermon doesn't make any sense to you right now. Have a seat. Thank you. We saw in 1999, in the early part of 2003, the Democrats were straining to overthrow the elected president, George W. They were having their hardest to overthrow the guy. They made accusations of hanging Chads or hidden Chads. They had problems with the Electoral College. They wanted to have a revote. They were just not happy with the president being elected. They were having fits. I mean, it was bad. It's not as bad as it is now, but it was bad. We saw it in 2019, even happening today. The President of the United States trying to find evidence, or the former President of the United States trying to find evidence of a global conspiracy against him from becoming president again. It's funny because all the people that got up and said that Bush, that Trump, not my president, right? Remember that? He's not my president, not my president. And they had a great big thing when Trump first came to the office. He's not my president. And all the Republicans and all the Christians, all the patriot Christians, all the, American-loving Christians above, I should say, American, they're not, I can't say the Christians. But all the people that were like Fox News Baptists were all up there 100% saying, if you don't like our president, get out. He's the president, get out. Well, you know what? Those same people today are the ones getting up. He's not my president. He's not my president. He is your president. He is. You got stuck with him. Sorry, that's how it goes. We see in 2019, even today, the President of the United States trying to find evidence of a global conspiracy. I mean, look, come on, man. Just take the gospel fact. That was a little play on words right there. He's not mad. He got called into work. Honestly, he's not mad. Just take it as gospel fact that the 80 million voters today suddenly took it upon themselves to finally vote at the last minute, and you lost the election. Just admit it and move on, right? There's no global conspiracy. Anyways, but we do see something here when it comes to Christianity, when it comes to movements, when it comes to churches, when it comes to power, when it comes to influence. There is a passing of the mantle as well in churches. We're going to take some things out of passage today, out of the Bible, and we're going to look at some different instances of when the mantle was passed, the moment that the mantle was passed. And we're going to look at some influences towards that around it. We have to, first of all, understand that if you have a mantle of authority, if you have a mantle of influence, if you have a mantle of position, I got good news for you. It's not yours forever. I got bad news for you. It's not yours forever. It's a double-edged sword, because if you're in leadership, you don't want the leadership forever, right? Sooner or later, you just want to step aside and retire. You're like, I'm done. I don't want to do anymore. Sooner or later, that mantle of authority, you're relieved when it's taken off your shoulders. You're relieved when you don't have to deal with that week in and week out. You're relieved when it's not pressuring you. And that goes for family as well, right? I mean, when it goes for family as well, and I'm sure that some here can say that as well. Babysitting. Has anyone ever babysat before? Watched kids before? You're so glad. I mean, you like babysitting. It's really cool. It's great. This is great. You get your responsibility. You get some bit of power. Oh, power! And then the parents come back. You're like, oh, thank God. 1 Samuel chapter 3, we see the same thing. Eli, here in this passage, failed to see the passing of the mantle. But how could you not? How could you not see the passing of the mantle? He failed to deal properly with his sons. His sons caused people to hate the sacrifice to God. His sons caused people to abhor the things of God. And when he addressed the situation, he did it passively. He didn't do it with full intent. If he took a sliver of passion that he would have had towards anybody else and did that much righteousness and justice against his own sons, who were perverting people, who were perverting the nations, and the women that slept at the tabernacle doors, they were there for protection. They weren't prostitutes. They were there for protection. And by the way, we've got to keep in our mindset that church It's got to be a place of purity. It's got to be a place of sacred consecration. It's not just a place where we get together and hang out. It's a place where there's people come from all walks of life. There's people who have broken homes. There's people who have complete homes. There's people who are single. There's people who are, older on years and almost empty nesters. There are some people who are just all different things. And the conversations that we have, the conduct, how we handle ourselves, the words that we use can either pervert people or it can help people. Even the words that we use. And I'm not saying, look, I understand if the words used in the Bible, we can use it. But because the preacher was wise, he sought out words. He sought out acceptable words. Just because it's in the Bible, and I'm not correcting the Bible for it all, but sometimes it's okay to use a different word. And we're in communication, we're not quoting scripture. We're in communication, it's okay to use a different word than what the Bible actually says. In this day and age, knowing there's a mixed audience from different walks of life. Not quoting scripture, not referencing, just in our own conversations. It's okay for that. And it's okay not to be the most relevant, caustic sailors in the world. It's okay to say words that aren't four-letter words. Be more descriptive. You're smarter than that. Then you have to rely to four-letter words to describe your words you're talking about. Out of all we want to be treated as intelligent, smart people, and then we go around using four-letter words. That's just ridiculous. It's below us. Anyways, Eli failed to see the passing of the mantle. He failed in equity and justice. We see in this passage he failed in equity and justice. And in chapter 2, 1 Samuel chapter 2, it says this, and verse number 35, and I will raise me up a faithful priest, that he shall do according to that which is in mine heart and in my mind, and I will build him a sure house, and he shall walk before mine anointed forever. And it shall come to pass that every one that is left in thine house shall come and crouch to him for a piece of silver and a morsel of bread, and shall say, Put me, I pray thee, into one of the priest's offices, that I may eat a piece of bread. So he's like, hey, look, I'm going to bring judgment, I'm going to bring equity, and now these people are going to come to this priest that I'm going to raise up, this faithful priest that I'm going to raise up, and they're going to come to him for a morsel of bread, they're going to come to him for a piece of silver, and they're going to ask to be put in the priest's office. They're like, hey, let me just serve. I'm hungry. At least feed me. Help me take me out. Help me take care of me. Now remember, this is in contrast to the gluttonous, disorderly conduct that had been taking place. Sydney, hands in your lap. The disorderly conduct that had taken place with his very sons. And now God is saying, I'm going to wipe that out, and these people are going to be begging for even more morsel of bread. Instead of taking what comes first and making it for themselves, even taking out from the offering of God, which comes first, he says they're going to be begging for a morsel of bread. So Eli failed to see the passing of the mantle. He failed in proper equity and justice. Now, the moment that this mantle was passed was the day, obviously, the morning after the Lord speaks to Samuel. Samuel. He gets up, goes to Eli. You called? Yes. He says, I didn't call you. He goes, all right, go back to bed. Okay, he goes back to bed. Samuel wakes up. Yes, you called. Here am I. I didn't call for you. Go to bed. Third time. Samuel. He gets up, goes to him. You called. I'm here. What's up? Don't tell me. Oh, you know what? It might be God. The very morning after this whole conversation, this whole episode, this whole waking up out of sleep to wake up and find out what you're talking to me about, is the moment that he found out the mantle had passed already. The mantle had passed. And he woke up to find out about it. Eli failed to see the passing of the mantle leading up to it. Eli failed in paving the way for the successor. He failed to pave that way. He failed to make amends. He failed to discipline his employees, as it were, his sons that were underneath him. He failed to dismiss them, even to execute justice and judgment upon them. He failed to properly handle the situation and to make restitution and to make amends with the people, to make them understand that the sacrifice to God is still to be sacrificed regardless of the perverted priests that are in the office. He failed to do that, and because of that, Samuel had disorder in his ministry there as both prophet and priest. So Eli failed to see that passing of the mantle. Elijah, go to 2 Kings chapter number 2. Here's the second time we actually see the passing of the mantle in 2 Kings chapter number 2. Abigail, can you turn the air conditioning up to 71? Make it a couple degrees warmer. Second Kings chapter number 2, we see here they're on their way. They're on the, he's trying to find out what's going on. The Lord would take Elijah into heaven by the whirlwind. That Elijah went up with Elisha from Gilgal, verse 2. And Elijah said unto Elisha, tarry here, I pray thee, for the Lord hath sent me to Bethel. And Elisha said unto him, as the Lord liveth, and as thy soul liveth, I will not leave thee. So they went down to Bethel. And the sons of the prophets that were at Bethel came forth to Elisha and said unto him, knowest thou that the Lord will take away thy master from thy head today? And he said, yea, I know it. Hold your peace. Yeah, I know. Just shut up. I love that passage. Elisha had a way with words. I love Elisha. This guy was like free. He just let it go, right? Super sarcastic. You remember they come in to arrest him? They're trying to take him and bring him before the prophet. And they're trying to bring him to the chapter 1, it explains it. Elijah's there, and he says, if I be a man of God, let fire come down from heaven and consume thee, and thy 50. If I'm the man of God who you're seeking, let fire come down from heaven and consume thee. And fire came down from heaven and consumed him. And another 50 come out. Can you imagine? Look, you got to be kidding me, right? The next 50 come out. Second string gets on the field. March up. There's Elijah sitting over there. He goes, we're come to arrest you. Are you Elijah? And he goes, if I'm Elijah, if I'm what you're looking for, let fire come down from heaven and consume you and your 50. Second time. Third string goes, oh, okay. And they're going up to Elijah, and Elijah says, hey, wait a second. We know you're the man of God. We know who you are. Please don't kill us. Please don't call fire down from heaven. Please don't consume us. I just love that story. But Elisha, this guy right here, was just the same speech. He had the same conduct. He would let it loose. And then, by the way, you are who you hang around. You are who you let influence you. Who you are around influences you. You pick up their mannerisms. You pick up their tone of speech. You pick up how they list things. For instance, I'm going to give everybody a grocery list. And tell me if not, this is not a MO for listing things among a certain movement. I need you to go to the store and get a loaf of bread, get a gallon of milk, get some butter, get some flour, and get some sugar. Anytime you hear it listed, it's that same tone. You know why? Because we are, even down to the way we talk, the way we explain things, the way we illustrate things, it's all the same thing. Sooner or later, we all have the same voice. And they all cried with one voice. The same tone, the same pitch, the same everything. On Sunday mornings, I have a routine. I get up in the morning, and first I wake up. I usually wake up my wife. And Sunday's my one day to sleep until about 7. And I take advantage of it. And I wake up my wife, get her out of bed. And she goes and wakes up the girls, or I try knocking on the wall, and the girls wake up. And sometimes if the fan's not blowing, and then I'm done for about 10 more minutes. I've got 10 minutes of alone time. Then they're all in the bathroom getting done with their showers and makeup and hair and all that. I get up and I go take my shower and I get dressed, shave, While I'm in the bathroom in that Sunday morning, I have my phone and I always play the Cathedrals Quartet, Southern Gospel. Don't shoot me, but I always play the Cathedrals and I blast it on my phone and I'm taking a shower, shaving, getting dressed, and that's what I listen to. And I was listening to a song today, and it was one of the, they sing the song often, but this one actual video of them singing all four parts, bass, baritone, lead, and tenor, all four parts match the same voice pitch. One of the very few times y'all did this, there's always like, hey, they're going to sing the same songs, but it's in different keys or different octaves. They say the same note on the same pitch, the same note. It was like middle C, and everybody sang that note, all four. And I was like, that was unison. They sang the same exact everything. Everybody came up, everybody came down to that middle note, and you could barely tell there was four people singing. But there was four people singing. They sang with one voice. When you hear in the Bible that they came in with one accord, with one voice, they all shout out, you can actually find that over in Acts 17, Acts 19, where I think Acts 19 was in Ephesus and they're shouting out, great is Diana, Ephesians, and with one voice, they're actually in unison on one voice and that same note, carrying on that same exact note with one voice. That's pretty cool. But, I mean, it's not cool in the fact that they were doing it. It's cool that it's one complete focus, one complete thought, one complete pitch, everything's in common. Elijah and Elisha. Elijah saw it, and he was trying to put aside Elisha, and Elisha was like, no, I'm going to come with you. In chapter number 2, he asked for a double portion of the Spirit upon him. He asked that a mantle would be passed, and he wanted that mantle to be passed. When you're carried away, I want to see it. What will you have? He goes, I want a double portion of your Spirit. I want a double portion. And he says, if you're with me when I go, you'll get it. And he was there, and he got it. That's the exact moment. You don't see very often in Scripture, like the actual time a mantle is actually vividly passed, except here, right? You see this where the mantle had been passed. In 1 Samuel chapter number 15, we see with Saul and David. And by the way, Elijah never had 100% cooperation of all the sons of the prophets. In fact, when he went to Bethel, when you see in 2 Kings, when he went to Bethel, the sons of the prophets came out to Elisha and says, hey, by the way, your head is being taken away from you. But these were also the same people that probably they were not on the Mount Carmel with Elijah fighting off the prophets of Baal. I'm not saying that they bowed down the knee to Baal, because the Bible says there is still a remnant that had never bowed the knee to Baal, right? But here, they weren't outspoken. They weren't in the forefront. They weren't the ones that God had used in a mighty way on Mount Carmel. And you're never going to have the full respect of all the prophets. Newsflash, as a pastor, as a preacher, I'll never have the full support of every pastor, every preacher, even if they're right in doctrine. I'll never have it. And if you're expecting it, if you're expecting 100% of people behind you 100% of the time, you'll never have it. As the pastor of this church, I can tell you I don't have 100% support of everybody in the pew. And you know what? I can live with it. It gets frustrating at times. Sometimes we want to get skill it out and knock some people in the hot side of heads. But you know what? I'm fine with that. I don't need to have a full support of everybody here. Just don't go against it. Just don't go against it. You may not be on board, but don't row against it. You know what I mean? That's the difference. Don't row against the direction that's going on. But Elisha had that issue. Elisha had the same problem. Elisha had the same scenario. There's still people that didn't respect and didn't acknowledge him as what he was. So with David, we're reading here in the passage. We've been going through Sunday school, and the guys have been doing a good job. And I love today, by the way, that there is disagreement with interpretation of the Scripture, and yet we still can admit, we still see each other as brothers in Christ, and I appreciate the maturity of the conversation you guys had. And I think it was awesome that you guys could share your differences and still walk away as friends. I'm glad I hear the pistols at dawn. But by the way, I just want to know, Eka, did you shoot Gabriel in the face? Oh, you didn't go? Who shot you in the face?
No, I got hit by a jiu-jitsu.
Oh, I thought you went paintball yesterday.
No, okay.
Oh, okay. That ruined everything. I was hoping you got shot in the face. 1 Samuel chapter number 15. Just kidding. Just messing. He's wearing makeup. Anyways, 1 Samuel chapter 15 and chapter 16, we're reading here with Saul and David. Instead of passing the mantle, preparing the way for the next king, Saul goes on a vengeance tour. He goes out and he's not even focused on the Philistines. He's not focused on the Amalekites. He's not focused on anything or anybody. What he's focused on is a flea. He's focused on David. He's chasing after David. He's going after to kill David. He's wasting all this time and resource, like we heard about last week, what good leadership does not do, is waste good leadership. And he's going around and wasting himself down trying to chase after David. Even if he was trying to establish Jonathan as the next king, the next rightful king in line, he even threw a javelin. He even tried killing Jonathan. I'm doing this for you. Throws a sword at him. Throws a spear at him. I'm like, your words and actions don't mix. So even with Saul chasing the death, he should have been establishing a kingdom, and he didn't. He put David as public enemy number one. You know what's sad to say? If I'm a pastor, my job is to instill in one of you guys to be the next pastor. My job is to not be insecure as a leader and not develop you to be the next pastor. That when I step aside, God raises you up to be here. And not have to find somebody from the outside that's self-contained, that we're like, you know what? We didn't miss a beat. We can keep on going. We had a foretaste of that this past year, right? November, December. I was on like vacation or something. And being gone for those 2 months and even into the early part of January, even to now, there's still leadership that I haven't taken back, that I haven't tried, because I'm like, you know what? It's better for me not to. It's less off my plate. But still, instead of rising up, that leader that comes behind us, they get chased off. They destroy reputations. They have character assassinations. Just because someone is gaining a little bit of precedence, just because someone is gaining a little bit more confidence, or people are being flocked to this person, it's not an insult against you as a leader. It's the fact that this guy may have just a little bit more charisma. Or maybe your inactivity, maybe your indiscretion, maybe your lack of involvement, and people are starting to see more involvement from this guy. David has killed his 10,000s, even though he didn't. It was a hype. But still, Saul, you sat back in your tent with your armor off, not facing Goliath. David went after the guy with a slingshot and a pocket full of rocks. Sometimes inactivity and lack of involvement is our own demise. But instead of making that person public enemy number one, why not instill leadership into that person? Why not develop that person? Why not strengthen that person? Look at Daniel. Daniel was by no means going to be the next king of Prussia. But yet he was made a high-ranking person of authority, as it were, because he became a high-ranking person of authority because of his leadership skills, because of his leadership ability. Joseph became number 2 in all of Egypt because of his authority, because of his wisdom, because of his favor, because of who he was, not because of the things that he did, but because of what he was and who he was. David to Solomon in 1 Kings chapter number 1. David to Solomon in 1 Kings chapter number 1. David did something kind of different than Saul. He made it established for his son to rule and reign, but he had to go back and he didn't do it with full preparation. He prepared the temple and got all the inventory and all the stock and all the battle plans and everything ready to go for the temple, but not the throne. He got the temple all prepared, but not the throne. Think about the family drama that Solomon had, that Solomon inherited, that Solomon got. Adonijah proclaimed himself to be king and had people go out there and proclaiming him to be king. And then when Bathsheba found out about it, she went to David and said, hey, David, wait a second now. Solomon's supposed to be king. And he goes, yes, well, you need to go and proclaim Solomon to be king because Adonijah's down there making himself to be king. And a time of indecision, Adonijah thought he was rightful to do it because he was older. He figured he was next in line, but guess what? Age doesn't matter. And just because you seem to be qualified for the position, you don't get to name yourself in the position. You've got to let God ordain you to be what you're supposed to be. By the way, when God ordains you, you don't need people to validate you. You don't need for man to validate you if God has appointed you. But here's the thing too, understand. If you're not of God, you will fall. If God, updating someone, if God promoting someone is not of God, they will fall, and you don't need to take pea shots at them. This whole argument of people whether ordained or not, whether qualified or not, all of it goes to pot. Take Gamaliel's approach and say if it's of God, it will fall to naught. Except if it's in the middle of our church and it matters to our church, then we take a stance on it. But if it's not dealing with our church, keep your nose out of it. Don't worry about it. Don't take pea shots at people. Because what? You're going to happily stand against God? Can you honestly fight against God? No. But David failed to take care of family drama. And it even came down to there's such infighting. There was even manipulation. The fact that Bathsheba would have to go to David when David was old and he was cold and they brought in a woman to help warm him, which was stupid. But he had to bring a woman to help warm him and that nurse to help bring him and help him and help his last bit. Wasn't Adonijah, who was it, the one that took that wife? Took that nurse, took the mistress, if it was, take that person to himself, kind of manipulating himself to be the throne? Really? How much manipulation took place in the king's family? Pestilence. Think about the pestilence that took place, all the drama, all the infighting, all the nonsense that David went through. Even his own family, his grandkids. When you live by the sword, you die by the sword. And Solomon had to go in and wipe out. Solomon had to go in and, David was a bloody man. Solomon had to put to death many people in his first acts as king because he had to handle his dad's problems. I wrote the sermon like last week, so bear with me if I don't remember the guy's name. Who is the guy when David was fleeing from Saul, and he goes to the king and he goes and gets the bread, and then he finds out that David had been there, and Saul goes out and kills the priest. Who is the Doeg? Was it Doeg the Edomite? Yeah, Doeg. Wow, I did it all by myself. Doeg the Edomite. And he was there, and who is one of the first people that he kills, that he puts to death? Doeg. Solomon had to take care of Doeg. You remember over there with Mephibosheth when he comes out, the servant's name was Gehazi, I think it was. Gehazi? Was it Gehazi? No. That's Elisha. Ziba? Whatever the guy's name was. You remember he came out, he started bad-mouthing and he started going against. So he stands up, he had to put him to death as well. Solomon, even though he was not supposed to be a bloody man and David was a bloody man, David never took care of his own battles. Something switched in David's mind where he no longer took care of his own battles. He became super passive in dealing with his personal strife. One minute he was going to go and take after Abigail's husband. And the next minute, you don't see him doing that. He puts his sword down. He does absolutely nothing. Absalom. Instead of taking him out, instead of dealing with the problem with the incest within his family and the rape that happened in his own family household, he did nothing. And Absalom took up the cause. Joab took up the charge. You see all these different people stepping up. But now you see Solomon going in, and his first act of justice is like, you should have been gone a long time ago, but my father didn't fight his own battles, and now you're gone. But if David had done that, how much smoother would Solomon's reign have been? Think about this, John to Christ. In John chapter 1, John the Baptist had an understanding of it. He said, I must decrease, he must increase. Even though Christ had not done what John expected, and John second guessed it. By the way, as a pastor, one day I'm going to step aside, one day I'm not going to be here by death or by whatever, by resignation, whatever it may be, and one of you, or if God allows one of you to step up, you may lead the church in a different focus than what I focused on. May lead you in a different marching orders than what I focused on. God may have you move from one location to another, and it may not be what was in my heart to do, but I can't sit back and second guess you. When I became the pastor here, and I was in Hartville, and I was like, you know what? Most of the people are coming from Akron. It makes more sense to move the church closer to where everybody's coming from, to be more central to where everybody's coming from, right? So that was my prayer. That's my goal. So we moved from Hartville to here. It was cheaper, needed a little bit more work, had a freestanding building, da-da-da-da-da. We moved from there to here. The former pastor was going to stay on and be here and was going to just be a church member. He got upset, and one of the reasons why he left was because of us moving here. And that's one of the spiritual, deep reasons of why he got mad and left was because of the location. Another spiritual, deep reason of why he left the church based on spiritual possessions was because I changed your church logo. I'm not kidding you. The first conversation, I remember we were taking Abigail to the dentist, and I was in the car, and he's laying into me because I changed the church logo. I'm like, just because things change, it's not a slap in the face to you unless it's over doctrine. Unless it's over something that actually matters. Location doesn't matter. Fonts of a logo doesn't matter. Doesn't matter. The colors of a church pew or the church chair doesn't matter. The name of the church being changed doesn't matter. The doctrine preached matters. And if you're fully on board, knowing full well what the person preached, it'd be different if the person came, I believe in the King James, I'm going to use an NIV. I could see that being a problem. But it wasn't. It was nothing other thing, and yet caused issue. Christ hadn't done what John had expected. And John started second guessing it. As much as John decreased, there was still some more decreasing he had to do. And you know what? It's very hard for a pastor to remain in a church where he pastored before without it being that same issue. Pastor to emeritus situations hardly ever work out. Here's a question for you. Who will step up? Who's going to take the church? My time is short. My leaving is at hand. Who's going to take the church? No. My time is short. I don't know how much longer I got on this earth. I don't know what's going to go on. Sydney, keep your hands down. We'll be talking at the church. My time is short. My time is ending. Go to 2 Timothy chapter number 2. My premise, even before I become a pastor, I have this premise. This is my focus anywhere I go. My goal is to duplicate myself. My job is to replace myself within the first 5 years of being in the pastorate. Within the first 5 years, my job is to remove myself, is to duplicate myself. So if anything happens, I can step aside. The church is off the hitch. I got 5 years in my mind. I've got 5 years to train up someone to take my place. 2 Timothy chapter 2, verse 1. Thou therefore, my son, be strong in the grace that is in Christ Jesus, and the things that thou hast heard of me among many witnesses, the same commit thou to faithful men, who shall be able to teach others also. What is my responsibility? My job is to teach others also. To teach others also. It's my job. So I'm sorry if I don't have time to talk about cryptocurrency. I'm sorry if I don't have time to preach about the shape of the earth. I'm sorry if I don't have time to talk about what style of music the world should be listening to. I'm too busy building and establishing a foundation for the next person. I'm sorry I don't have time for all that. I apologize if I'm not status quo for everybody else. I'm too busy trying to preach the word of God than to figure out what president candidate I'm supposed to stand up and support, or to figure out what little league baseball team I'm supposed to help coach in the community, or what secret society, whether the Knights of Columbus or the Lions or whatever camp club out there is to be part of. I'm sorry if I don't have time to be part of the ribbon cutting ceremony at the new Student Learning Center. I'm far too busy trying to develop and teach the things of God and take care of my family. You know what I'm saying? And that's the focus. We have very short time. The time of my departure is at hand. I want to preach the things that actually matter and instill into the people the things that actually matter. Defining reprobates. I can point out pure reprobates, but trying to predict reprobates, I don't have time for it. My time is at hand. You'll figure those things out. Grievous wolves will enter. I don't have time to label every single one of them. Titus chapter 1, verse number 5. For this cause left I thee in Crete, that thou shouldest set in order the things that are wanting, and ordain elders in every city as I appointed thee. And if any be blameless, the husband of one wife, having faithful children, not accused of riot or unruly, but for a bishop must be blameless, as a steward of God, not self-willed, not soon angry, not given to wine, no striker, not given to filthy lucre, but a lover of hospitality, a lover of good men, sober, just, holy, temperate, holding fast the faithful word as he hath been taught, that he may be able by sound doctrine both to exhort and to convince the gainsayers. For there are many unruly and vain talkers and deceivers, especially they of the circumcision, whose mouths must be stopped, who subvert whole houses, teaching things which they ought not for filthy lucre's sake. So this is the thing. It says here, we need to take care of these things. My time is ending. This is the type of person that I'm supposed to grow. These are the type of people I'm supposed to develop, that I'm supposed to look out for, to entrust the church with. We find the same thing in 1 Timothy chapter 3. Not just with pastors. Look, you can have a great pastor, great leader, but you also need some great leaders under the pastor to carry on the work. You need deacons. You need a fallback plan. You need a fallback plan. You need someone to help if the pastor is incapacitated to step up and lead up there. I'm thankful for the guys in the church who are able to help out these different things. But can you imagine if we actually had a leadership in place? We wouldn't have to go and find a third-party source. And if we learn anything from the fallout, what happened in Fort Worth, is this: leadership has got to beget leadership. If I, as a leader, don't develop leadership to step in and help take care of that, we're going to have a third-party source come in and put a third-party person in place. Without the church vote, without the church's decision, without the church's input, it's pirating. But it's the fallback is on the responsibility of the person for not developing leadership within the church. That's my goal. Man, develop as much leadership as fast as possible. Properly, and not using miracle grow, right? There's no such thing as an apostolic succession. There's no such thing as pastoral succession. I don't get to pick and choose the person who comes up after me. But if I develop the leadership, it's kind of well spelled out. This person is to be the next leader. Acts chapter number 20, Paul gathers the church of the elders of Ephesus together and lets them know, hey, there's going to be grievous wolves coming in among you. But I'm giving this leadership to you. I'm giving the last bit of salutation, this last bit of exhortation to the leadership of this church, of this city, that guys, you've got to feed the flock of God. Guys, you've got to watch out. Guys, I've given you a great example of what I can be as a leader. I'm never going to see you again, but I'm telling you, watch out and feed them. Be careful of them. Take care of the church of God. 1 Peter chapter 5. Hey, elders, feed the flock of God, not by constraint, but willingly. Develop yourselves and be the kind of leader that can, the elder that can submit themselves to the younger. And the younger, submit yourselves to the Father and entreat them as fathers. Have harmony among yourselves. Why is it that some churches have no old people? Something's wrong with that. when there's no old people? By the way, there's something equally wrong when there's no young people. My wife and I were part of a church. And the pastor literally chased away all the men. Any male leadership, he literally drove them out. Even when we were like 100% trying to push people to the pastor and just being a servant, the fact that we were doing what he wasn't, people came to us. And I'm like, no, go talk to the pastor. Go talk to the pastor. The pastor's like, oh, you handle it. And then I handle it, and the pastor's like, you should let me handle it. I'm like, you told me to handle it. What's going on? But when they started coming to me for leadership, and I'm like, oh, no, go to the pastor. And he's like, no, you handle it. And people started coming to me because I handled the problems. Absalom started handling problems, and people flocked to him because he handled problems, whereas David did not. That's why people wanted Absalom as king, because he handled problems. He did justice. We already saw Eli not handle problems. Now we're seeing David not handle problems. Absalom did. Even if he did it unjustly and did it wrongly and did it for the wrong pretense, for the wrong reasons, he still wanted to do it. Christ left us the church. Now, he's still the shepherd. He's still the chief shepherd. He's still the Lord. He's still in charge of the church. He's still head of the church. But he gave the authority to us, his people, his followers, not to the apostles. This is where people get this mixed up. He left it to the apostles, the apostolic succession, and only those who the apostles ordained are the ones in charge. That's poor hermeneutics. He gave the church apostles. He gave the church teachers. He gave the church prophets. He gave some authority. He gave this to the people within the church. For what? For the perfecting of the saints. For the furtherance of the gospel. For the furtherance of the ministry. Matthew chapter 28, we find this. He says, all power is given unto me. All authority is given unto me. Go ye therefore. The same power that I have, I'm giving you. Acts chapter 1, but ye shall receive power, authority. Not just might, but authority, and ye shall be witnesses. Go ye therefore, teach all nations. What am I supposed to teach them? Whatever I commanded you. Lo, I am with you always. So when you've been given a mantle, you've got to. My wife was helping, and I'll go back to this illustration. When there's no men in the church, there's no structure of the church. I'm thankful for the women. I was sitting back coming Wednesday, and I think it was just my wife, girls, and then it was just like Sarah and this is Savannah. And I was just literally, I was like, dude, where are the guys? Where's no ladies in this church? You go to some churches, and there's ladies everywhere, and there's like a handful of guys. Maybe not even a handful, like 2 or 3 guys. And it's like, hey, Brother John, will you lead us in prayer for the start of the service? Sure. Okay, Brother Joe, will you please take up the offering and pray that God has blessed the gift and the giver? Brother John, I know you just prayed 15 minutes earlier, but can you pray before the preaching? And then, hey, Joe, you just prayed a half hour before. Can you pray again and dismiss us in prayer? And it's the same recycled prayer because they're not really men developing themselves for leadership. They're just called on, and that's the leadership of a church. You go to some churches, and I'm going to nail on some old IFB churches because of the problems they have. They have no male leadership. You go there, and women are running the ministries. Women are in charge of everything. The pastor, if he's not there, has got to call an evangelist to cover. It's not because he doesn't trust the people in the pew, but because they have no desire to. You find a church that's heavy laden in ministry, it's because it's women driven. We got to do something. We have a soup kitchen. Nothing's wrong with the soup kitchen, but I guarantee you it's a lady in charge of the soup kitchen. We need to have a clothing ministry. I guarantee you the clothing ministry is led up by a woman. There's nothing wrong with women. But when your church is so, your idea of in-reach or outreach is all on many things and not focused on the Word of God, it's because it's women-driven and they want to have an outlet. Nursery. Daycare. Missions support. Missions aids. Men's prayer breakfasts. I promise you, men's prayer breakfasts are not put together by men. It's by women who want to have an opportunity to have their men out of the house for a couple hours on a Saturday, and they cook for a change. Women, I guarantee you, head up the men's prayer breakfasts. Nothing's wrong with women in a church, but if it's VBS, vacation Bible schools, day camps for the kids, I guarantee you it's because it's women driven. You know why? Because there's not men leading up the charge. When the pastor's working 70 hours a week in church, doing ministries, overseeing all the different ministries, he's doing it because the women in the church want ministry. They want to do something for the Lord, and they're doing so much activity under the umbrella of a church where there's no one to help run it, and I guarantee the pastor is running himself ragged 60 hours a week. And it's not that he's not chasing men leadership away. There's just no men stepping up because they work 40 hours in a week. They don't want to come 40 hours a week and work 40 hours for the church. Yes, I love the Lord. I'm going to be there on Sunday. I just worked 40, 50 hours a week. I had to mow the lawn at home. I don't have time to mess with all this. I need to get my feet up. I'm like, man, I'm old. I'm 40 or something. I don't. Yeah, can you believe it? I don't have time to mow the lawn or weed the garden. I'm old now. And this is the kind of stuff that takes place. And it's, look, leadership within the church, it's got to be developed. And it's got to, and I'm thankful for the culture that our guys have, that our church has. It's kind of by force. But the guys in the church lead. And it's not because we're a bunch of woman haters. It's simply because the men in our church have a desire to focus themselves on the things of God. But here's the thing, guys. The church is going to die out without outside ministry. And that's why we need women. So stop being selfish and find a wife. I'm being totally sarcastic right there. I know. It's getting to the point with some of you guys that it's almost as bad as joking about a married couple saying, why don't you have kids yet? It's almost as painful. And I joke about it, but I know from the heart, I know it's frustrating. I know you guys are every temptation's out there and every frustration, and I understand that. But the mantle's going to be passed. It's going to be passed to one of you. You know what? We read today, and I'm going to use this quick verse. This quick last reference. We just read today in 1 Samuel 27. And discussion was made about why David went to the Philistines. Did David go to the Philistines to just out of last-ditch insanity, like I need to get out of here, manipulation? Did he do it because he was like, I know what, I'm just going to do something different? Or did he do it for safe harbor? I think David just went to a place where he could honestly live an existence in freedom and liberty, even if it was to turn his back on Israel for a time being. Because obviously the state was against him. Obviously he left Israel because the king had a track record of being unstable. And he did it not because he was unloyal to the things of God. He left because he was just trying to save his hide in liberty. But here's the thing. One day you will reign. One day you will reign. You don't have to go to Philistines. You don't have to go to Gath to reign. Just stay the course. The mantle has been passed. Guarantee the mantle is being passed. Just be faithful. Don't change your allegiances. Don't jump ship. Don't go off into the world. Mantle is being passed. The blessings are going to come. God's favor is going to be there. Just don't switch. Don't bail out. Don't, hey, you know what, I'm going to go, instead of being independent Baptist, I'm going to go be non-denominational. It doesn't solve a thing. Why are you forfeiting what you know is true to that what is not? Why just don't jump ship? Stay the course. Keep your hand, don't shift gears. You know stay the course. You already know what God has for you in your life. Don't just flip the switch. Don't toss out doctrines for the sake of compromise. Don't compromise for a woman. But don't compromise for a position. Don't compromise for an easier time. Don't bail out on God. But the mantle is going to be passed. Be patient. Just be patient. Stay the course. All right, let's go and pray. I preached way over this morning, whatever time it is. But let's ask God's blessing on our service as we dismiss. And Brother Daniel, You're always leading in prayer, always leading in singing. You never pray. And I appreciate your service. I appreciate that. But can you please ask Aaron to pray for us?